Moving on to the second part of our Digitize or Disappear series, we have Sabih Ahmed, who is a senior researcher at Art Asia Pacific. He's based in New Delhi and has overseen numerous projects and research initiatives in India, which include digitization of personal archives, as well as a bibliography compilations of multilingual histories of art. Art Asia Pacific was initiated in 2000 in response to the urgent need to document and secure multiple recent histories of contemporary art in the region. And it has collated one of the most valuable collections of material on art from the region. So please join me in welcoming Sabih Ahmed. Please come in here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, a big congratulations to all the organizers for bringing the Global Art Forum to Kuwait. Just one correction to the introduction. I work with the Asia Art Archive. It's different from the magazine called Art Asia Pacific, but I think we all have a similar agenda of widening our understanding of art in Asia and the world, of course. This being the second segment of Digitize or Disappear, I'm going to be discussing another aspect of technology and digitization, which is in fact all ubiquitous, all pervasive in our lives. And I'm referring to databases, I'm referring to algorithms, I'm referring to new ways of mapping fields. And while at Asia Art Archive, our project, how does this work? We digitize personal archives among various things, personal archives of artists who are teachers, artists who are new media artists or installation artists, artists who've engaged with tradition or institution builders, art critics and curators, photographers, art historians. One aspect which I'm very happy that we began our session with today was about magazines. And we've been looking at what kinds of writings have existed around art. So of course we've been digitizing newspapers, we've been digitizing catalogs, contextualizing them, magazines that were produced by artists. And it's quite amazing that what was it about the art field that all these artists were compelled to write, to curate, to be institution builders. And so besides all of that, there's one project that we've been doing, which is the bibliography project, where we've been compiling what all has been written about modern art in the past century. And what's curious about India is that because of the colonial history, the language most commonly used and circulated is, of course, English. It's the common binding language. But also that, for better or for worse, much attention to the art field has been paid via the English language. Now, to just bring things in perspective, the 2001 census revealed that there are about 30 languages Indian languages within India, which are spoken by over 1 million people. There are 122 languages which are spoken by over 10,000 people. And there are about 1,600 other languages which are probably spoken by lesser people. And this is just a census. We have no idea, how the debates would be about the difference between language and dialects. But we at the Asia Art Archive, or some of the projects that we've been doing, started looking at 13 languages to begin with. And these are languages, one, which have a dominant discourse on art, which at least to our understanding do. There are also some languages which are regionally specific, and these regions are in a kind of contestatory position vis-a-vis the nation. So we're looking at what kinds of histories or art writing gets produced about Indian art from places which don't have a very smooth relationship with the nation state. So we've been looking at all of these, and just to show you what it looks like, we're of course working with databases. In black and white, these are the kind of databases we compile of, basically title of the article, who's written it, where it was published, which publications, where the year, the month, what page numbers, where we found it, who are the other people who were also contributing to those books, keywords that we've been putting together. And so, well, this is what the database looks like, and we've got over 12,000 such articles and essays and books covered in this project, and in 13 languages. Where did this thing go? So the regional scope, these are all the places that we've been referring to. There's some dots you find in yellow, and those are yellow because languages travel even if people can't. Writings and objects travel even if people can't. And there are languages such as Tamil that are also spoken very much in Sri Lanka. Languages like Bengali, which are not just spoken in West Bengal and India, but also in Bangladesh. Languages like Urdu, which are spoken in many parts of India, but also prevalent in Pakistan. And of course, there's so many other languages which have also been writing about Indian art or South Asian art, and which we've been slowly covering strategically. And it's not like we're the only ones doing this, because there are existing bibliographies on art, which we found and which we've also referred to. The process was very interesting for our research because we went about doing this, like a baton race, a relay race. So we have 2 researchers working in 2 regions. Then once they finish a couple of months of work, we find 2 other researchers working in another region. And then they start surveying the field. And it's a lot of really hard work because we expected libraries to have their own catalogs in place, but some of them did, many did not. So it was really going through bookshelf after bookshelf, identifying what about, modern art has been written out there. And of course, no one knows all of those languages together, so it has to be different people who are surveying the field. And so we've been compiling all of this. And in the process, the real challenge is, how do we make sense of all of this data? Because there's so much out there. And what was interesting was we started working with provisional, artist writings, which of these are about institutions and organizations, which of these are debating tradition, nation, modern, some writings about the role of artists. These are just some that we were looking at. And then we started, surveying and kind of color coding them in chronology to see in different languages how you can identify patterns and trends in a particular period. This is just between 1948 and 1968, 20 years of history in which there seems to be a lot more of reds and blues, which are basically about artist writing. There's a lot of artist writing happening in Marathi. There's a lot of discussion about the role of artists, the moral role of artists. Is it appropriate to make nude paintings in art? These kind of questions are being discussed in Marathi. We also looked across languages to make these comparisons. So in Bengali, for instance, there is an all-pervasiveness of artist writing. There's so much artist writing, all chronologically. There's just so much of it in those 20 years. Yeah? And this is just a case study. These are just provisional meanings we're trying to make of the project that we're doing, right? And to our surprise, where'd it go? I'm very sorry about that. Okay. When we started off the project, we're speaking to art critics, we're speaking to art historians, artists who've been out there, who've known the field far more experienced than us. And many of them would say, you won't find much in this language, or you find only about this much. Look at these people. So we started with a, before list of what we within our limited scope of knowledge know. And then after, at least at the stage we're at right now, you can find so many more names suddenly added of all of these people writing about the arts, yeah? We started off with these many artists in Mumbai. We came across these many. Some languages, of course, have a very, very flourishing discourse. And in Bengali, for instance, we had just these many names to begin with, but then we had these many more of just one language. So many people writing about art, right? So it's quite remarkable in how all of this has been going on. Along with that, we've been also organizing workshops and colloquiums and symposia. The reason being, how is art history being taught in places? How is art being circulated in places? And what was really fascinating in the discussion earlier this evening with the Al Arabi magazine is that you can see that magazines are traversing the field. You can see in some ways they're unifying concerns, or at least resonating common concerns and urgencies. And what's really fascinating about art magazines and art books is that in art magazines, there was a big component of images that are circulating. And when you have images circulating, you might not have people seeing new contemporary art in exhibitions, but then you see them in magazines. It's not like today's day and age where on the internet you can find anything. In the 50s and 60s, when people don't really know what the discussions around modern art is, why is Cubism important, what is modern art visually look like, these were the mediums of, in a sense, exhibition. So magazines almost served a kind of exhibitory logic. So in today's time, some of those magazines are now out of circulation. You can't even find them. And so in relation to things disappearing, our concern is that when they reappear, how do they reappear? And we have been testing all of these things via data visualization. And so, let me bring you some. Okay, no, the other one, yeah. Okay, I guess it's not opening, but across chronology, as you move across time spans, you can see different areas having more prolific writing cultures. You can also look at this via artist names. So if you select an Amrita Shergill or some particular artist, in which languages has she been written about? In which regions has she been written about across time, from this decade to that decade? You can have an animated kind of mapping of the kind of artists being discussed, the kind of art movements that are happening. Another fascinating data visualization that we... Is this for Maximize? Right? Okay. So you can choose to see authors and which are the artists that they've been writing about. This guy's written about these many artists. This person, well, at least according to our database at the moment, hasn't written too much. This person's written about these many artists. And which are the articles that they've been writing about? So it's really about trying to map the field in different ways, and not just about which artist is writing about whom. Let's see who all have written about Picasso. These many writers have been writing about Picasso, and they also were writing about all these other artists while they wrote about Picasso. You can also, wait, where did it go? You can, yeah, let's look at authors, and let's look at what are the tags that they've been. So these writers have been writing about abstract art, anthologies, biographies, bulletins. This person written about Bengal school. He's written about drawings. So in a way, trying to get a sense of, what all are the urgent issues of a certain time period, what all are the concerns for different people, and what are the trends in art writing. These are the kind of things that we've been mapping only via the bibliography project. And how are you doing with time? Do we have a bit? 2 minutes? 10? Okay. So this is, of course, a starting point because we're not digitizing with this. The concern is that once we have all of this mapped out, this is stock taking of the field, on what basis do we start digitizing now? And where will we find all of this? Luckily, because of the bibliography, we know where we found it, and we also display to the public where you can find it if you're looking for a particular artist. But when we go about digitizing or even translating, because these are 13 languages we're talking about, it'll have to be done strategically. And therefore the workshops and the symposia that we've been having, therefore the collaborations, the dialogue with other institutions is so necessary. So I'm really, really excited about the workshop that we're having tomorrow because I am not so familiar with the Arab region. But what kind of connections might emerge? What kind of connections, if not by artists, but by thematics? What is the urgency around abstract art in the 50s and 60s? What makes the 60s and 70s such a vibrant period for writing, for exhibiting, for internationalism? And these are different kinds of internationalisms. So we're looking at all of these across the board, and I think the next 2 days of the workshop are really going to find some connecting threads of all of this. Let me open it up for Q&A. Thank you very much.
I had a question in terms of, were you finding other patterns in terms of were they connected to art schools, were they connected to certain types of schools or anything like that you saw in terms of patterns?
Oh yeah. For one, the major centers of the arts, or at least visual arts, have had a lot to do with art colleges across the century, from the early 1900s till today. A lot of centers have been revolving around art colleges. And so you have Shantiniketan in Bengal on the western side, on the eastern side of the country, being a very prominent center for the arts, which in fact envisioned a very different kind of internationalism. It was looking at Pan-Asianism with the Far East, with China, with Japan. There were people from Japan coming over to Shantiniketan to share ideologies, share ideas, and kind of have an anti-colonial kind of bent towards art. So we're not going to do academic realist paintings. We're going to do wash technique, watercolors, and scroll painting kind of things, or mural paintings. So a lot happened around art educational systems. And personally, I'm very interested in institutional histories and pedagogy. So a lot of my projects somewhere automatically get bent towards what are art institutions doing vis-a-vis the field. Because it's obviously encouraging a new generation of artists to come up, and different values that are disseminated in the field. And I think even the work that I'm doing with the archive, the kind of workshops we're doing in different places, it's also about capacity building. It's not just about discussing what we know, but discussing with new techniques that we can learn, how we can expand our own understanding.
Thank you so much. It was a super interesting presentation, and the work looks incredible. I can't even imagine how many researchers you're working with.
About 15.
15
so it's
only.
Only 15, and all of them work just for a few months each. So it's really been very strategic, a very close communication with everyone. But of course, it wouldn't have been possible without dialogue with many, many people. We were in touch with all kinds of resource persons, institutions. There was a lot of networking. Again, via the internet, telephone, everything. It was made possible because which librarian do you go to? Someone's not going to be supportive, so pull some strings. All of these things.
Yeah. And I think my question was related to this idea of networks, and also I've worked on digital archives before, and one of the main question that comes up after all of the labor that goes into producing and thinking about how these documents, texts, images, how they're presented, but also how they're used and how they're activated. And I wondered, since you just revealed your interest in institutional pedagogies, it'd be great to hear a little bit about where you're thinking, how it would be activated. Would artists have residencies, for example, with the materials? Is it just for academics?
I'm glad you asked this, because archiving more and more is trying to come out of itself, its own domains of the documents that it's preserving, right? One of the images of the workshop that I showed, it's a very low mic. Okay, one of the images, is this okay? Okay. So one of the images of the workshops I showed was in the Clark Art Institute in New York. Similarly, we've done other workshops in colleges, and the idea is to discuss with teachers how they teach art history and what they would ideally like, and whether this bibliography project can facilitate some of that. So what was really fascinating was that some of the teachers went about saying, so far whenever we taught modern art, we never compelled our students to learn other languages. It was, when you're teaching Persian art, or not Persian art, Mughal art, or Deccan art, pre-modern art largely, you ask your students to, learn a different language so that they can understand the manuscripts, so that they can understand other scholarship around the area in other regions. In the art field, or modern contemporary art scene, you don't find people being compelled to learn other languages, at least for the South Asian art history. So one thing is going into institutions vis-a-vis teachers and how they might incorporate some things from the bibliography. Another thing that we are aiming for, and I hope to discuss at the workshop, and even I think it's a concern for everyone, is crowdsourcing. This is of course not complete. This is only the foundation and the starting point of it. So hopefully with students, with people who are doing research, as people build their own bibliographies, can we have a common pool in which bibliographies can then be filled up, and they can be visualized, used in different ways? Can this bibliography tie up with other bibliographies if everyone doesn't want to merge this one, right? So these are the different ways we hope to kind of make this a usable resource rather than just a gesture. I think we also, I can go on, but we also have archival fellowships. We also encourage artists to engage with databases, how they can reimagine this. We in fact had a very interesting person who is himself a kind of an artist in Australia who was doing the data visualization for us. So he's kind of rethinking what he does with other surveys, and how the bibliography or the academia can enrich his practice. Yeah. Thank you very much.